Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Monday Night Football showdown slate between the Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams, and what should be a pretty fun NFC West showdown in the desert tonight. Lots of good fantasy options here. 51.5-point over-under and only a 2-point spread. So hopefully this is one of the better primetime games that we've seen all season long. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. If you do enjoy the free content here over on YouTube, I'm sure you enjoy the extra content over there. Spreadsheets, cheat sheets, data sheets, optimizers, ownership projections for the NFL, NBA, MLB, and NASCAR. If you do want to check that out, you know where to find it. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you sign over on Prize Picks, you can get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. So it's free money. Why not use it to your advantage? And it's very fun to play over there. I do highly recommend it. I think it'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. And I don't think it's a question of do you want to play Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford. I think we're all planning on doing that. It's just a matter of how much do you want to captain or flex these guys. I personally prefer captaining Kyler Murray over Matthew Stafford tonight. I realize he's about $1,000 more expensive, so it's easier to say, but not as easy to do. But when a quarterback has a rushing upside, like Matthew Stafford has absolutely no rushing upside, maybe outside of a rushing touch on the goal line, even then, that's going to be very, very, very rare. But Kyler Murray, 2 rushing touchdowns last week, actually had one of his best rushing performances of the season. I'm not sure if that's going to keep up, but this should be a great game environment, and Kyler Murray does offer that rushing upside, so you have to keep that in consideration. I typically have my rules to around 10 to 15% captain exposure at the quarterback position, and some guys, depending on the slate, if we have like a bunch of skill position players that I think are just way more likely to be optimal, I'll be around like 3 to 6%. Now, I think Kyler Murray is probably a guy that you could go over 15% on this slate just because he does offer you that rushing upside, and those rushing touchdowns can add up if he happens to hit on those, and anytime they get around the goal line, it's always a possibility that Kyler Murray could take it in himself, so you have to keep that in consideration. So I'm probably going to bump that up. Guys like Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and just trying to keep a couple of other guys, maybe like Cam Newton or whoever, maybe Taysom Hill. I tend to bump those up a little bit because they do offer you more upside than normal quarterbacks. But in general, both these guys are fantastic plays. I prefer Matthew Stafford in the flex spot. Want a lot of exposure to him. I mean, it just should be a very high-scoring game. And if that's the case, typically quarterbacks are going to pop up in the optimal because obviously they're the ones throwing the ball to the skill position players. Now, I prefer the skill position players in the captain spot more than the quarterbacks, but Kyler Murray, like I said, going to treat him a little bit different than I will Matthew Stafford here. But both guys, fantastic plays. I will say the matchups probably aren't the greatest on paper. The Rams are allowing the 7th fewest points to quarterbacks, and the Cardinals allowing the 3rd fewest points to quarterbacks, but game environment should trump that, and if it's back and forth like I think it is, and Vegas thinks it is, I mean, both these quarterbacks should be fantastic plays. Then moving on to our lineup, like I said, I do like both quarterbacks a lot, so we're just going to jam them both in the flex spot. Like I said, I do like Kyler Murray in the captain spot, but we're going to try to find potentially maybe a cheaper captain just so we can kind of jam in a bunch of very solid plays in the flex spot and try to get a well-balanced lineup. You can obviously play them in the captain spot, but just for this build that we're doing currently, we're just going to go both of them in the flex spot, and that's going to leave us just around $7,000 for the remaining 4 spots. And moving on to the running back position, we'll start with the Rams here first, and it's kind of easy this week. It's just Michel, and that's it. Sargent saw 30% of the snaps last weekend. Michel saw nearly 100, with 97% of the snaps, had over 20 carries, nearly 5 targets. He had elite usage. He's on a great offense. There should be plenty of scoring opportunities, and he's only $7,200. The Cardinals are kind of just mid-pack versus the run this year. They're allowing nearly 7 catches per game to running backs, and I mean, it's not like an amazing matchup, but it's not a bad matchup either. And Michel, if he's going to give me 20 plus touches on a really good offense, I would take that all day at $7,200. I think he's one of the better captains on this slate, because how many guys are going to get 20 plus touches in this game below $8,000? Not many, and he's probably going to be the only one. So I love Sony Michel here, and I think he's just one of the better plays in the entire slate. And then going to the Cardinals, they actually do have a kind of interesting situation here. So James Conner has been the complete RB1 in this offense. I mean, he saw 90+% of the snaps last week, and he's actually been playing pretty well. He's been using the passing game in the absence of Chase Edmonds, although it sounds like Chase Edmonds could return tonight. There's nothing official yet, but he is designated to return from the IR. And again, we don't know. He's going to be a game-time decision, but if he happens to play, assuming he can get a decent workload, he's the pass-catching back in this offense, and James Conner will lose that upside that he had at nearly $10,000. So if he's going to mainly split snaps and lose the passing game work, it's tough to pay nearly 10,000 bucks for him because you're already paying a lot of money for guys like Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, and Kyler Murray. So if you're going to jam in a $10,000 James Conner, you're going dumpster diving. And your lineup's just really not going to look that pretty. You're going to have to get rid of one of those big three options. So James Conner grading out not very well in the projections right now. Yes, if he happens to score 1 or 2 touchdowns, that could work, but he's probably only going to get there tonight on touchdowns, which is not really something you can bank on too much. If Edmonds happens to play at 4,600 bucks, assuming he gets like a handful of targets, I actually think he's a pretty good play at $4,600. But as of right now, we have no idea if he's playing or not, so just kind of wait for the news. And if he's good to go, he will grade out pretty well in projections. Like as of right now, projecting Chase Edmonds in, I have them at very similar projections. And if that's the case, just give me the guy that's half the price of James Conner. Moving back to our lineup here, I am not going to jam in James Conner. I just think the price tag is kind of absurd, especially if Chase Edmonds happens to return. If Chase Edmonds is out, it makes that price tag a little bit better because he'll probably project for around 15, 16 points, which looks a lot better than the 11 to 12 that I have for him currently. But again, he's still going to have to get there on touchdowns. Yes, he'll be more of the pass catching back if Edmonds happens to be out, but if he's in, it definitely hurts him quite a bit. So I'd have exposure in tournaments, but like if we're going for more of like a cash game or single entry build, I'm probably not getting to much James Conner tonight. But I do like Sonny Michel a lot. $7,200 for a guy that's probably going to get 20 plus touches and had some involvement in the passing game just seems way too low for me. And he should have scoring opportunities. He's the goal line back, and the Rams have a pretty high implied team total. So we're actually going to plug him in the captain spot. I'm not sure if he's my favorite captain, but just kind of looking at optimal builds, that price point does let you fit in some guys. Like if we went Cooper Kupp at captain, we're spending an extra $8,000. So this does open up some room for us to have some more added flexibility. If Chase Edmonds happens to play, I think he's a very good flex play because he's only a few $100s more than kickers, and I'd rather take the upside with Edmonds over a kicker. But right now, since we don't know if he's playing or not, I'll refrain from him. And if he fits at the end, sure, we'll plug him in. But as of right now, don't know. So we're going to just kind of stay with this, which with Michel and the captain, leaves us around $6,000 left. If we went Cooper Kupp is my favorite captain tonight, so I'd probably have the most exposure to him, but it's only going to leave us $3,500. So as you can see, the added flexibility is kind of nice if you do go with Michel, and you're going to get a lot of touches, so I do feel pretty good about it. And moving on to wide receivers, we'll start with the Rams group here first, which is obviously consisting of the man this season, Cooper Kupp, at a massive price point of $12,000. But to be honest, he's probably worth every penny because you're going to get your 10 plus targets every single week, and he typically goes off every single week. There's a chance of a touchdown or two, and usually your 100 plus yards, and you usually get like 7 plus catches. So Cooper Kupp definitely deserves this hefty price point. I will say the Cardinals have been pretty good versus wide receivers this year, but don't care about the matchup sometimes. Cooper Kupp should be able to eat anybody up. Now, he didn't have one of his worst games of the season versus the Cardinals earlier this year, but the Rams were just getting blown out. They did not have a fun time. Assuming this game is closer back and forth, Cooper Kupp should be fine here. And Van Jefferson coming at the wide receiver 2 with kind of Odell. They're kind of mixed in there, but he's $8,000 and Odell at $6,200. Then Ben Skowronek, that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not really sure, but he's $1,000 and he actually is somewhat viable. Looking at snaps last week, Cooper Kupp played nearly all of them. Van Jefferson close to 80%, Odell Beckham around 50%, and then Ben down there at around 25% of these snaps with a couple of targets. So really it's kind of descending order of how I want these guys. It's just a matter of what you can fit. If you're playing cash games or single entry, I'm going to try my very best to get Cooper Kupp in my lineup, averaging 11.25 targets per game this year, over 8 catches, 113 receiving yards, a 31% target share, and nearly scoring a touchdown per game. Like there's just no reason to want to fade Cooper Kupp. He was busting for a while last week. If you guys played him in cash games, I know I did. And for a while, he was killing me at like 0 points. He was doing nothing. And I think he went into the second half with maybe 3 or 5 points because he had a couple catches at the very end. Then he ended the game with, a ton of points. That's just what Cooper Kupp does. Had a long touchdown and just an overall fantastic game. So love Kupp if you can fit him in, which you really should try to. And then Van Jefferson, I would say he's a safer option than Odell, but he is kind of expensive and he's not really grading out too well for me because $8,000 for Van Jefferson is just a little bit tough. Like at that point, if it come down to playing either him or Michel, I'd much rather take Michel just because you're getting those guaranteed touches. Now Van Jefferson, he's got a high ceiling for sure. He can hit the long ball, but just definitely not as safe. I do think he's a fine tournament option. Same goes for Odell, $6,200. We know the upside of Odell is just he can be definitely boom or bust, but I think he's fine, especially if you have Matthew Stafford. Just get as many pass catching options as you can. And if you're looking for value, Skowronek, he's dirt cheap, plays around a quarter of the snaps. If he gets 1 to 3 targets, you're probably happy if he catches 2 of them and gets a decent chunk of yards. So just really depends on who you can fit. They're all fine play, especially if you are playing Stafford. And then moving on to the Cardinals, we have DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, AJ Green, Rondale Moore, And then a couple other guys that maybe get a few snaps here and there, but nothing you can really count on too much. And just looking at snaps last week, all the big three wide receivers, Christian Kirk, AJ Green, and DeAndre Hopkins played around 60-70% of the snaps. Rondale Moore close to half. And actually, Wesley down here played on around 25% of the snaps if you're looking for just an absolute punt option. But again, you're mainly interested in the three guys up here, plus Rondale Moore at only $2,000, which I actually think is a halfway decent play because we know he's going to get targets. The problem with him is that he has an 8 out of 1.5, so all of his catches are kind of like around the line of scrimmage, so he's got to have open space to work with. But I mean, he's got a 16% target share, averaging close to 5 targets per game and only $2,000. Like, I don't mind that at all. And if he can make a big play, they get him some open space. It actually doesn't look too bad. Looking at everybody else's numbers, DeAndre Hopkins, 19% target share. Christian Kirk is 17% target share. AJ Green, 16% target share. And Moore, 16% as well. Like, it's very spread out in this Cardinals offense, which is why these Cardinals receivers are not really grading out that well. The Rams are kind of below average versus wide receivers this season, but it's just so spread out. Like with the Rams offense, you kind of know where the ball is going. Yeah, Van Jefferson and Odell is there, but it's going to Cooper Kupp. We can't say that for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins because you'd think, he's the main alpha dog here and he is scoring touchdowns this year, but less than 20% target share for a guy that's nearly $10,000. Doesn't suck, but doesn't feel great. He's only averaging 5.3 targets per game. But I would say, again, it really just depends on who fits in your lineup. I don't have a huge preference. They all have similar target shares. Just whoever fits, you can throw in if you have Kyler Murray or if you just want to run back option. But going up like a heavy on Ram stack, I think they're all okay, but not great plays. And moving back to our lineup, the only guy I'm probably plugging in for right now is Cooper Kupp because we still have to talk about tight ends, defenses, and kickers. So I don't want to plug another wide receiver, then we're stuck with only one spot left. But I want Cooper Kupp in. Now, it's going to really just annihilate the salary that we have left. But he's my highest projected player in the slate, so I definitely want to get him in. And I have Matthew Stafford in the lineup, and I want a pass-catching option with them. Now, it'd be nice to find another pass-catching option with Kyler Murray, but since he's got legs, he can kind of be a nice standalone play, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to afford a pass catcher with him, but we'll have to see. But we have around $3,000 after the last two spots. I figured it'd be kind of cheap, but I think we can still make it work. $6,000 total, close to it. If we play a kicker, we can just get a dirt cheap option like Ben from the Rams, and it might not look too bad. And moving on to tight ends, it's kind of easy here because Zach Ertz is the main tight end for the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, Demetrius Harris does get some snaps, but Zach Ertz is the main pass-catching guy here. And for the Rams, it's Tyler Higbee. They're both at similar price points. They're not going to grade out as well as their fellow wide receivers on the same team, but they are fine options. There's always touchdown upside for tight ends. It's just they're probably a little bit lower owned just because $5,000 for a tight end like Zach Ertz and Tyler Higbee never feels great. But if you are using the quarterback, these guys are fine correlation plays, so I have no problem at all with Ertz or Higbee. On the season for Zach Ertz, averaging around 5 targets per game, and Tyler Higbee is averaging 5 targets per game and close to 3.5, 4 catches. Both guys around 35 receiving yards. They're probably going to have to get a touchdown to really pay off because you're not going to see Higbee or Zach Ertz rack up like 100-some yards here and 7 catches. So you're mainly kind of hoping for touchdowns here, which other price points doesn't feel great, but they're fine plays. And then the other guys, only just dirt cheap punt YOLO options if you're building like 150 lineups tonight. And as far as the defenses go, I don't have any interest in either. We have over a 50-point over-under here and only a 2-point spread. So it should be pretty high scoring on both sides. And unless there's a defensive touchdown, like even if there is a defensive touchdown, there's a good chance both these defenses are giving up like 24, 30 points, which it still might not even be optimal. So I'm not super interested. Yes, they're both cheap, but I think they're cheap for a reason because two pretty good offenses here, and I just don't really have any interest in both. And if there happens to be a defensive touchdown or two, whatever, I will take the L there. But the kickers, I think, are pretty good plays. They're playing in a dome, so you don't have to worry about any weather. Matt Prater, Matt Gay, around $4,000. As I always say, I try to be even to the field or just maybe slightly underweight on kickers, depending on the situation. I think this is one of those slates where I want to play some kickers, not in the captain spot, maybe a 1 to 2% max, but I think kickers are pretty good plays. I'll probably have around 20 and 25% of both. They always say they're better cash game plays than tournament plays because they offer you pretty high floors but low ceilings in general. But we'll definitely have good kicking conditions and there should be a lot of scoring opportunities, so definitely don't mind both here. Probably prefer Prater because he's playing at home and they have a slightly higher implied team total, but both guys are fine. They both grade out pretty well. And then just finishing off this lineup, like I said, guys, please don't copy this. I'm making it on the fly. I'm just trying to see what fits as we talk through this slate. There's always a good chance I'll never even touch or play this lineup, but we're probably going to have to find like a $2,000 guy and a $4,000 guy or something close to it. We could plug in one of the kickers. If Chase Edmonds is active and expected to have his normal role, we could plug him in and that would leave us $1,000 left, which I believe leaves us with Scourneck, yeah, $1,000. Played on like a quarter of the snaps last week. It's nothing great, but he does have 5 and 2 targets. the past 2 games that he's played in, 1.8 and 4.5 points. So it's not terrible. Maybe he catches a long ball and you have another pass catching option with Stafford. And Chase Edmonds kind of correlates well with Kyler Murray just because he's the pass catching back in that offense. So I think you guys get the idea there. And, if Chase Edmonds happens to not play, you could just go with a kicker and then you'd have a little more money to spend. But let you guys use your imagination there and you can build whatever the heck you want. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become a fish member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Cheat sheets, optimized ownership projections, not just for the NFL, but other sports as well. But I think that'll be pretty much it. I will stop rambling. Make sure you check out Prize Picks. If you haven't already, use code CPENNY for a free money bonus. Play your favorite plays tonight, and you can win up to 10 extra money. It's pretty fun. Just take props, hit the overs, hit the unders, whatever you want to do. But I do highly recommend it. But I think it'll be it. I'll get out of here, and I wish you guys the best of luck tonight and a good start to the week.